Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Klein Dodgers podcast. I usually don't intro the show, so bear with me here. Jake Reiner alongside Kevin Klein. The Dodgers are winning some more spring training games, so that's good news. We got some news and notes to get to from spring camp, but first, want to introduce our very special guest tonight. He is a seven-time Emmy Award-winning sports anchor and host. He works for KPRC2, which is in Houston, Texas, a station that I know very well. I used to work there myself. Very, very, very happy to welcome Ari Alexander to the show. He covers the Astros among other teams in the Houston area. Ari, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Fantastic. Well, let's kick things off with some impressions from spring training. Obviously, you are very much embedded in Astros camp, but you also cover a lot of other news and notes across Major League Baseball. So, Ari, what are your thoughts so far on spring training? What's going on with the Astros? How are you feeling? How is everybody outside of Dodgers world feeling about the Dodgers this year? I'll give you the floor.
Well, they hate you guys, so that's kind of how that's going throughout the rest of the league. You talk to fans that are not the other 29 teams, the evil empire that the Yankees were in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s for what they were for a while. There's a lot of complaining about the deferred money, the loading up on the relievers, loading up on the starters, and so from a outside point of view, if you are not a Dodgers fan, I think that for the most part, you hate the Dodgers unless you are a Shohei Ohtani fan, which there are plenty of those, or people that generally like Mookie Betts. I think he's a pretty overall likable guy. Other than that, there's some excitement to see Roki Sasaki. There's some excitement to see year 2 of Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Other than that, I don't think anyone likes you guys.
That's fair. Nobody inside Dodgers world likes the Astros either, which I'm sure you knew about that as well. I actually was working at KPRC during the 2017 World Series, and I covered the Astros and Dodgers in that World Series, so I know that world all too well. I always felt that when Hurricane Harvey happened in Houston, and the Astros were able to kind of bring everybody together, give people, a chance to cheer for something. They go on this incredible run throughout the playoffs. They beat the Yankees in the ALCS, and they go on to win the World Series. And it was very, as a Dodgers fan, I felt disappointed, but also I was able to kind of look at the Astros and say, okay, I understand why people would be happy about them winning. And then, of course, we find out later that, things weren't as above board as we thought they were. My question to you, Ari, is, we are almost a decade removed from the 2017 title. How are Astros fans feeling about, that title? I know that they've won another one after that. So I guess the bad taste, or even if there was any bad taste, I'm not sure, that kind of gets washed away. But do Astros fans even still care about that scandal or that title? How do they view it these days?
I would think they don't at all. And as you would imagine fans are, they're very defensive of their team. There is mostly, I'm sure that there's a small minority of people who don't believe they did anything wrong. There's your other group of people who the blame immediately shifts to, the Yankees were doing it and the Red Sox were doing, similar stuff with the Apple Watches. But there's, I think, a giant amount of fans that just, they cheated. And then you find all these different stats of they were better on the road than at home, and how hard baseball is, that even knowing what pitch is coming, or believe that what pitch is coming through a certain amount of innings might not help, still hit a 96 mile an hour or a breaking ball or whatever. Like hitting a baseball is. And so I think from an Astros fan perspective, they don't care. There's no feeling of this is tainted. There's no feeling of disappointment. The franchise that had been around since 1962 won a World Series. And with Hurricane Harvey being right before it, I think that it made it that much more special for the people of Houston, that finally this Astros team that had been up and down for years, and you'd have these little mini pockets of being good, and then they were bad for a while, right before that, and did the tanking, and Jeff Luhnow built up the team, and then it all came together the way it was supposed to. They had sold this for years and years. We're going to tank. We're going to be god-awful. You're going to be miserable spending $13 watching these guys go 56 and 106, but 5 years from now, we're going to be awesome, and it's all going to be worth it. And I think for Astros fans, it ended up being after 2017, ALCS, World Series loss, World Series win, and ALCS, wild card. This has gone on for almost a winning team if you're an Astros fan. And I'm not an Astros fan. I cheer for a different team, and that team is largely miserable with little pockets of good year and here and there, and you start to appreciate the big years, right? Like I remember 2015, one of my favorite years, because the preceding 7, 8, 9 years of that were garbage. And so you come to appreciate it. And for fans of the Dodgers, for instance, who are good every year, for fans of the Astros who are now good every year, I think that there is a little bit of expectation that, like, if there was a down year for either one of those franchises, it would be a nightmare, right? Or the Dodgers had this thing for a long time where they'd win a bunch of games. They're the class of the division. They're supposed to go far in the playoffs, and they'd lose at some point in the playoffs. And it was all 2020. And then obviously last year, a dominant run through the postseason. That's different. You're going into that season knowing you have a chance. If you're an Astros fan or a Dodgers, that you hope you have a chance. You hope you have Tigers, right? For instance, you hope you have a good year. You hope it works out. That's not the way the Astros. That's definitely not the way the Dodgers fans treat the Dodgers.
Absolutely. What is your team, by the way?
The New York Mets.
The New York Mets. Okay. All right. And they're looking pretty good heading into this year.
They're fun. The Soto thing is huge for them. The fact that a player of that caliber would want to come there, I think, speaks to the change in ownership with Steve Cohen and the way trying to copy what the Dodgers have for years is finding the thinking people, right? Like there are books that have been written about who Dodgers employees were before that they worked for the Dodgers. And I think those are the type of people the Mets are going after now, where they have an ownership that will allow them to spend extra money on a pitching lab and extra assistants and extra, people to find those tiny edges that you need in baseball, the way that the Dodgers have been ownership has been allowing their team, their front office to spend those little amounts to get the people in to know that your development system is going to sustain winning. And it's finally good to see. And I don't think the whole 9 year, if everything goes the way it should, the 9 year drought of the Mets being miserable for almost a decade in between these great fun runs, hopefully that comes to an end.
It's nice when you root for a franchise or ownership really cares about the team and is willing to spend money. Ari, there's a few more topics I want to get to you with you, but I want to let Kevin jump in right now. Kevin, how you feeling?
Thank you. I am here. I got a take on Jacob deGrom, but I'll save that for a little bit since Ari's a Mets fan. He's going to want to hear this one. But I think the biggest story tomorrow, which will be Tuesday, has to be around Roki Sasaki making his spring training debut for our Los Angeles Dodgers. I wanted to get both of your guys' thoughts on Roki Sasaki because it's clear the writing is on the walls. The Dodgers are going to ease this guy into the regular season, as they should, because you look at his body of work in Japan, he doesn't have the innings total that one would expect for a regular major league pitcher. And obviously the Dodgers are going to preserve that arm, especially someone that throws max effort with the velocity and splitter in his arsenal. So it would be kind of naive to think the Dodgers are going to let this guy go 160 innings. But with Roki Sasaki coming out of the bullpen tomorrow for the Dodgers, does this kind of signal something that maybe he is either eased in very early in the season, maybe doesn't even start in Tokyo, or do the Dodgers kind of work him out of the pen, or maybe aggressively have a piggyback guy after him? How do you guys think the Dodgers approach Roki Sasaki is where I'm trying to get at early in the year?
I'll let you take this one, Ari.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way the Dodgers built their roster allows them to do this building up slowly with Roki Sasaki. I think that they had that last year with Yamamoto, where whatever you get, you're not necessarily relying on him to win all these games that you need to win until later in the year. Early in the year, you know that you have somewhat of a cushion, right? You know the Dodgers have a strong lineup. You know they have 14 starting pitchers or whatever. They're guys that can come in and start a game. And it's designed that way for a reason, because you get all these guys from Japan, and it's like a double-edged sword, right? The game is different in Japan, and it's going to take years to adjust. Shohei Ohtani, when he came over, it took had an elbow surgery. He was a good handed hitter when he was first in the big leagues, because the game is different in Japan. They pitch once a week. There are less games. Like, it's just not quite the same as the grind of 162 and then the playoffs the way it is in MLB. And I think that their roster is built around obviously sustained success, which means that they have the Landon Knacks and River Sheehans and whatever million prospect pitcher, the Bobby Millers of the world, backing this up. That if you throw in Roki Sasaki in a start and you only feel comfortable with him giving you 60 pitches and he goes 4 innings, you have like 12 other guys that you can, go some glass now, and you're building up Ohtani, and you have all the reason, knowing that the best pitchers in today's game are guys that maybe don't go as deep into a game, that throw max effort on their breaking stuff. You mentioned the splitter. It's all based on, how much rotation the fastball has in the slider and how much VAA you can get on a four seam or whatever. And for those little things that separate a guy or whatever, a spin rate on a fastball versus a good one, they have to go max effort. You have to get those little extra 50 revolutions of the ball. And for a guy to do that all the time, his arm could blow up, or he might not be able to go 180 consecutive innings, and you might want to give him little breaks at a time. And so the way that they built their roster allows that. I think that there's a chance that Roki Sasaki starts in Japan for a ceremonial standpoint, which I think they should do and would be great. But if he goes out and goes max effort 2-3 innings, he did his job. And then you have a piggyback guy.
I was going to make the same exact point. I think that they're going to have Roki Sasaki pitch in Japan, because if he's ready and he's healthy enough to do so, it would be ridiculous not to have him do that, especially with Yamamoto going as well. Even if he is an opener and pitches 1 inning or 2 innings, it doesn't really matter. You get the spectacle of him pitching in a Dodgers uniform in Japan, returning to Japan. I think the biggest thing for the Dodgers this year is that their biggest hurdle is trying to, manage these starting pitchers so that when October rolls around, because they're going to make the playoffs, have enough healthy starters available to go. So that's going to be the trickiest part to managing this rotation. And with Roki Sasaki, they are going to slow play him as much as possible in order to get the max amount of effort and, whatever they can come October, because that is the goal. And so same thing with Glasnow, same thing with Yamamoto, same thing with Snell. I mean, all of these guys, they're not going to really just run them out there and run them into the ground if they don't have to. They've built the bullpen up enough this offseason to where they can use a bunch of different guys to finish games. And so you're not going to see starters go past the 5th or 6th inning anymore with this rotation if they can help it. So I think Sasaki's going to pitch in Japan. How much? That's going to be the biggest question, but I do think he'll pitch.
I don't have anything else to add. I agree with everything you guys just threw out there. So Ari, you broke a number of Dodgers offseason moves, and to your credit, it seems like a lot of these guys in camp so far, there's one guy sticking out in particular that I think we're going to have to talk about right now. David Bote, someone that we didn't really expect to kind of make an impact for the Dodgers this spring, but so far he's been scorching the cover off the ball, hitting in the high 400s, has had multiple home runs, some RBI base hits as well. So Jake, this question is a little bit more geared towards you. What do you think the Dodgers are going to do with David Bote to enter this season?
It's really tough because there really isn't a spot for him. Unfortunately, you've got Chris Taylor kind of blocking everything right now. You would normally have some type of roster spot battle with like David Bote or Eddie Rosario or any of those guys that are fighting for roster spots. But with the kind of struggling Hae-Sung Kim, who they were hoping he would hit a little bit better, he has not. They're most likely, if it keeps going this way, they'll probably start him in AAA, which may open up another roster spot. But then you got to talk about Andy Pages. Where does he fit into this equation? So it's unfortunate that like David Bote, who I would at this point take over Chris Taylor. The problem is that you can't really do anything with Chris Taylor. He's got $17 million guaranteed to him this year. And so there really is nothing you can do. And Dave Roberts has already said that he appreciates the body of work more than anything else. And so as we know about Dave Roberts, he loves his veterans. He loves the guys that have been there for as long as they've been there. Chris Taylor, one of the most tenured Dodgers at this point. So I don't know how they can, unless an injury occurs, I don't know where David Bote fits. But the good news for him, at least, is that he's auditioning for 29 other clubs that may need a guy that can play multiple positions and hit the ball.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to hit that like button. If you're a new listener or a viewer, hit that subscribe button. I'm going to take us back to July 28th, 2024. Ari Alexander, who's here, threw out a tweet saying sources the Dodgers, Cardinals, and White Sox have discussed the framework of a 3-team trade. Well, we'll get into the guy that made the most impact, and that's Tommy Edman. I think one of the biggest questions right now for Tommy Edman is he going to be the Dodgers starting second baseman to enter the season, or is he going to be the starting center fielder to enter the season? Any thoughts on that? What do you think the Dodgers, what would make the most sense for the Dodgers right now?
Out of Tommy Edman, you put him in center field. He's excellent defensively in multiple positions. Center field is such a more premier position, a more useful position than second base. You can sort of put whoever at second base for the most part and figure it out. The Dodgers have a million of these guys that are these utility. That's the way that they've built their team. I think you're going to see more teams copy winning teams, right? And so whatever kind of stuff the Dodgers have done over the past 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, teams have copied that to some 14 starting pitchers that can go 5 innings and throw max effort. You're going to start seeing other teams do that, the teams that have the financial resources to bring in a million starting pitchers. The Dodgers are essentially built around having like 6 utility guys. I think you're going to start to see more and more teams value positional versatility on their bench to have a team full of Tommy Edmonds, Hae-Sung Kims, Kike Hernandez's, guys that Max Muncy's that can do a bunch of different things. Chris Taylor, who I know it hasn't so much of worked out, recently. And I can see, I got the comments, people aren't happy with the way he's hitting, but Chris Taylor as an idea essentially has worked for the Dodgers in the way that other players have been used by them. I mean, Mookie Betts, right? Like Mookie Betts plays multiple positions, is moving to shortstop, and he's a guy that's an excellent defensive player in multiple spots. And so the idea of that works very well. Hey, Bote, like this is how they build their team. You get a bunch of guys that, hey, you can play 4 positions. If you can't make the roster, either you go down to AAA and we'll figure out a spot for you when someone gets hurt, as happens in baseball constantly, or many of these other teams that you mentioned, these auditioning, whatever teams figure out that, hey, our bench needs to be versatile, those kind of guys are going to work. And I know the way that the Dodgers think a little bit is that the guys that can play the up-the-middle positions are super, super valuable. The Astros think this way too. If you talk to their GM, Dana Brown, it's all about, I got to have my defense up the middle. And so second base is the third of the middle position. You have to have an excellent defensive short fielder. Then you can worry about second base. There's a reason the kid, the worst infielder on the Little League team, gets put at second and not short. So Tommy Edman is excellent on defense in various spots, and you just sign him to another a contract extension, and then one of the many guys they signed to a ton of money this offseason, I think you at least start him out there in center field for now, and then whoever flashes, whether it's Kim, whether it's Kike, whether it's Miggy Rojas or whatever, can play second. And unless you have someone in center field that is so much better, specifically either defensively or is just crushing the ball, you have to configure your outfield in a way where you have to have this hitter in the outfield. I think Edman is most useful in center.
I agree. I think that they really do need to keep him out there because you can fill second base with any one of these guys that Ari just mentioned. I mean, Kike Hernandez being, my favorite to be the everyday second baseman if, we're looking at the team as it's currently constructed. And for Tommy Edman, I thought he played a fine center field. The problem with center field is that the other options aren't as great, like Andy Pages being a center fielder. We know that he's a better corner outfielder than he is a center fielder. That's a big position to rely on a guy that, honestly, can't really judge a fly ball, which is kind of insane when you think about a major league outfielder in Andy Pages. I don't know why they haven't been able to figure that out, but that's his sort of Achilles heel. And then you look at some of the other options like Chris Taylor, his bat is not worth it to put out in center field. So I like Tommy Edman in center field, and you can kind of use second base as like a by committee because you have enough guys that are good enough defensively to play that position.
And Maria G mentioning James Outman. I don't think Outman's going to make the opening day roster the way he's been hitting this spring training. He's got like 9 strikeouts and 16 or 17 plate appearances. He needs to cut down on the strikeouts in order to be a bona fide major league hitter. Ultimately, I think you guys are right. I think the Dodgers are at their best with Tommy Edman in center field with the way the roster is just constructed. And with Kim, they're going to give him that leeway and that time to develop. And hopefully he can take the reins as their majority bulk of the guy second baseman. But the thing that the stats jump out to me, though, is Tommy Edman is such an elite second baseman throughout the duration of his career thus far. You look at the Fangraphs metrics, he's a plus 25 defensively at that second base position, plus 20 outs above average as well. We don't have as big of a sample size with him in the outfield, but he's more along the lines of kind of average. Maybe with time he gets better. But we saw it in the playoffs. He played a pretty good shortstop in my position, and we don't need him at shortstop with Mookie Betts. But I just feel like Edman is just so versatile and an elite infielder offensively, and I think Cardinals fans would rave about that too.
So are you starting Andy Pages in center field if you're putting Edman at second? Is that, I guess that's what you'd have to do, right?
The way it looks right now, I guess you would have to. The other option, which is kind of stretching things out here, the Dodgers go out there and try to acquire a center fielder. But I think with someone like Pages, this team is so deep and they have the luxury to kind of have the growing pains. I think you could ride with Pages in center field for a couple months, kind of like what they did with Miguel Vargas a couple years ago. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You go get someone. It's just kind of the way I'm eyeing it right now.
Yeah, it's just it's a tough defensive configuration, and to Ari's point about the Astros prioritizing defense, the Dodgers prioritizing defense, the Astros are trying to work out Jose Altuve in left field because his defense is not holding up at second base anymore. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on that, Ari, because for Altuve, it's like you want to keep his bat in there. You're not going to make him a DH because of Yordan Alvarez. So what's going on there in Astros camp with Altuve?
Yeah, it's just sort of, it sounds like it's insane, and it's sort of the most sensible thing that they can do the way that their roster is constructed, unfortunately. And the Dodgers sort of have this same issue, like conceivably out into a corner outfield spot, but like you don't want to have Shohei Ohtani healthy and be Shohei Ohtani. Conceivably, he could play right field, he could play left field, but there's just no desire to do that, right? Same thing with Yordan Alvarez. He's not that bad of a left fielder, but Yordan Alvarez has had knee issues over the years. He's been somewhat injury prone with little things, had issues with his hands, were in pain for a while a couple years ago. And so the best thing you can do to keep Yordan Alvarez healthy is just let him DH every day and not play the field and not have to run that much on those knees. And if Yordan Alvarez is in the lineup, he is an MVP candidate. It's a very similar setup to what the Dodgers have of you stick Shohei Ohtani out at DH every single day, knowing you're going to have to figure out a defensive configuration otherwise based on who can hit and who can field. And you just know that, all right, we got our DH. That's the same thing with the Astros doing. At second base, Jose Altuve has been horrendous for 2 years now. And you try your best to hide it, and you can't. And he was hurt in a lot of 2023. He got hit, in the thumb and was out from the World Baseball Classic, and they stuck Mauricio Dubon in there, and Mauricio Dubon won a utility gold glove. And so what does that tell you is that you already have a guy on the roster, and Mauricio Dubon, who is significant upgrade going down every year in the defensive ratings are the Astros. They were in their heyday of the champions, the 2019 World Series team, 21-22, unbelievable on defense. And then it started to slip a little bit in 23 and slipped more in 24. And some of that is Jose Altuve's decline in second base. The DRS is minus like 13 or 15. The OAA is around there. Like, it's horrible.
I can't believe he's a minus.
So what do? You can't put him in DH. It's horrible. So you can't put him in DH. You're not going to trade him. He is the face of your franchise and is going to be a Hall of Famer. So what position can you figure out for him to play? He's not going to play first. He is 5'6". So you put him out in left field, right? It's the easiest position to play at that ballpark, 81 games a year. He can generally figure it out for, to some degree. You're not going to put him out at center because from a range standpoint, he used to be fast. He is less fast. He can still run. Like, he still hit 30 feet per second in like a single run, like when he needs to really turn on the boosters, but he's not the guy that can do that consistently anymore. And so there have been people, Astros fans, mostly they're like, well, you need to stick Pena out in left field or put him. No, he's not happening, right? Like, clean up at shortstop, but he won a gold. And that's only 2 years removed. And once he fixed whatever small things, they brought in a new third base back. They brought in a better first baseman defensively, and Christian Walker was one of the last 3 National League Gold Gloves and might win an American League Gold Glove this year. And then now it's so much easier in the way that the Dodgers are set up as well. It is so much easier to figure out second base than it is one of the outfield positions. It just is. From a adequate defensive standpoint, or you can go the way that a lot of teams do at shortstop and second, and you stick a guy out there, and center field, honestly, these days, you stick a guy out there who can't really hit, but is an excellent defender, and you just live with it. You just hide him at the 9-hole or the 8-hole, and you just live with it. And I think that Brendan Rodgers, the pickup that the Astros got, could be one of those guys. Dubon could be one of those guys. I think the Dodgers can do the same thing where you just hide a guy who can't hit at second base.
Can we talk about the outfield real quick? Because you talked about them wanting to make Jose Altuve the face of the franchise, when in my opinion, you had the face of the franchise and you decided to trade him to the Chicago Cubs. That Kyle Tucker trade, to me, and if Houston people are going to listen, I don't know if they'll agree or they'll be offended, but that trade is just so stupid, in my opinion. How do you trade Kyle Tucker away for that? And the return to me was very underwhelming.
From the Astros standpoint?
Yeah.
So I'm going to, all right, so here we go. I'm going to counterpoint you. And I'm not necessarily just trying to defend the Astros front office, because whatever they do is whatever they do. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad and whatever. I think long-term, the Kyle Tucker trade is a good deal. Losing 1 year of Kyle Tucker, you have no chance of re-signing him. Kyle Tucker is going to ask for and likely get more than $400 million in free agency. The Astros had the biggest free agent offer they have ever made was just given to Alex Bregman. It is less than half of what Kyle Tucker's starting bidding price is. You have 1 year left of Kyle Tucker. You have absolutely no chance of retaining him. For 1 year of control of Kyle Tucker, you get 3 years of control of Isaac Paredes, who is an average to above average starting infielder and someone that the Astros GM and front office loves. I have no strong opinion on Isaac Paredes. I know they love him. So you think about it from there. 6 years of control on a top 100 prospect, Cam Smith, who is a guy who has been raking in spring training. So I know Dodgers fans haven't necessarily been paying attention to some random 59th overall Astros prospect or whatever. Cam Smith is 4 for 7 with 2 home runs and a bases. He's had 5 games of Double-A. He got drafted last year out of college. He turned 22 a week ago. He is crushing major league pitching. He is, when he got traded I had people in the Cubs organization text me and tell me this makeup, personality, hard work standpoint. Other people in the league, as soon as they saw the deal, text me, quote, he bangs. Huge. Like, think of Cam Smith. So that's 2 parts of the trade. Third part of the trade is Hayden Wesneski. You get 4 years of control. I think it might be 5. I think it's 4 or 5. A significant amount of years of control. He's not even in arbitration yet. Of Hayden Wesneski, who has shuttled back and forth as a starter or reliever for the Cubs. He was less good his second year. He's kind of in and out, and then he was better last year as kind of a swingman, long reliever type. Filthy sweeper, can be a back-end starter. So you're getting essentially 13 years of control for 3 guys for 1 year of Kyle Tucker. And Kyle Tucker missed half the year last year with that broken shin, and they went off on a winning streak. And I think at that point, the GM, Banana Brown, in the front office said, you know what? We saw what we can do without Kyle Tucker. We can survive one no Kyle Tucker season, and then he's going to go off somewhere else anyway. Is the thinking on their end after, you win morning of, hey, this deal's done, like about done, like they're going to, Kyle Tucker's moving. You think it's insane. And then when you take a step back and you think about 13 years of control for a pitcher, a starting third baseman, and a future potential starting infielder or corner outfielder for 1 year of Kyle Tucker, knowing you have 0 chance of retaining him, it's fine.
So you're obviously well more connected than I am. So when you say there's 0 chance of retaining him, I'm going to take your word for it, because as an outsider looking in, I would think you let Bregman walk. You let Correa walk a few years ago. You obviously let Springer walk a few years back then. You have the cap room. You have the capital space to commit to one of these guys. And you mentioned $400 million. I think Kyle Tucker is worth that price tag. But to your point, if you said the Astros don't value him like that, then I guess it makes more sense in their shoes to let him go.
They don't value anyone like that. That's just not the way that they build a team. And again, Jim Crane has given the largest offer he has ever given, and it was 6 years, 162 or 100, whatever, whichever side reporting you want to take. But it's less than half of start at. I always see we got someone saying you don't think he's going to get over 400. A lot of people didn't think that, I was asking people, what do you think Juan Soto is going to get? And most everyone consensus came in between 500 and 600, and Juan Soto got 765. Prices go up. Kyle Tucker is very, very similar, more similar to Juan Soto than you would think. He is a little older, but this guy's going to be still in his 20s when he goes to free agency, and some team out there is going to give him a 10-year deal or whatever, a 9-year deal. And that's the other thing too, is we're not talking even about the numbers. The Astros have never offered a contract longer than 6 years. Kyle Tucker's bidding years-wise is going to start at 8. There was just no chance.
Is there anything else you wanted to add, Jake? I have another AL West topic, but I'll give you the floor.
I was thinking about that while you were talking, Ari, and it does make sense in the track record that the Astros have had, and honestly, you can't really argue with the success. I mean, you've got 2 World Series titles in that run of, and they, like Kevin mentioned, they're losing these, pieces of the franchise, these faces of the franchise, seemingly every year. And they still continue to win the division pretty much every season and make deep playoff runs. But I have to imagine that, from an Astros fan standpoint, maybe you're not so happy about the fact that they haven't handed out a large contract like that or retained these guys as long as maybe they wanted to. I know that fans were not happy with the George Springer, with George Springer going to the Blue Jays. I mean, he was one of the biggest fan favorites from when I was in Houston covering the team. What do you make of the fans' response? Are they kind of drinking the Kool-Aid too, of they understand the process and they trust it, or are they kind of on the side of man, we can't keep anybody around here, even Bregman?
Yeah, I think it's split. I mean, there's there's your different levels of fans, right? There's the fans that can name any, the Wainer Lucianos, the random prospect, 19-year-old Dominican prospects. And then there's the fans that casually tune in. I think that there is a large subset of fans that understand that you just were not going to be able to re-sign Kyle Tucker, and that until the Astros prove that their system, the way that they build a team, cannot be trusted because they keep winning. So until they stop winning, you sort of have to trust their process to some degree. It's the same way with the way that the Dodgers are built. They're good every year. Whatever you disagree with how they build their team, you have to keep trusting it to some degree because it feels like they know what they're doing. And so until that backfires and they have like a legitimate losing season, then I think you can start to panic. But for now, I think the fans are so conditioned to win. And the result of losing these guys has always worked out. They lost George Springer. They replaced him with a Chas McCormick, a Jake Myers, a little bit of Jose Siri. These, guys came in, and it worked out fine. You sort of the way that Moneyball works, right? Like you replaced him in the aggregate. And none of these guys are as good by themselves as George Springer. But all these guys they lost, other than Kyle Tucker, and his flaw, he was only had 1 year of control. The guys they lost all had very specific flaws. And that's why, other than, again, Springer, they sort of had some trouble in free agency, right? Springer, everyone knew, was not going to stick in center field for that long. So, as that contract ages, you're going to have to move him to a corner spot. And how much do you want to pay for a corner spot? So that's where the Astros come in and go, all right, fine, we're going to lose this guy who's good on both sides, offensively and defensively. We're going to replace him with a defense first mixed, and we'll figure it out. It worked. They went to the World Series the next year. They lose Carlos Correa, who's really good on a leadership standpoint, obviously excellent hitter, excellent defender. What is his flaw? Injuries, right? And so he had all these various issues, back issues, leg issues, etc. And it has popped up with the Twins. And there's, the Mets canceled a deal with him. The Giants canceled a deal with him. And so with Correa, the way that you're looking at it is, here's this guy's specific flaw. We're going to replace him with a player that's not quite as good, but Jeremy Pena's never really had injury issues except for a fluke type of injury. He got hit, broke his wrist in AAA. Since then, Pena's played like 135, 148, 140, whatever. He's been his rookie year, and he's just healthy all the time, and he's hurt. And so by the end of the year, you look at these guys' WAR, and by the fact that he's played 145 games and Correa's played 90, their WARs are similar, and you have now replaced Carlos Correa with a guy that is making league minimum until this year for virtually, the same type of production by the end of the year because he's healthy. Bregman, his OPS has now gone down 3 consecutive years. He has little injury things pop up here and there. He had to change the way he had in 2021. He had the elbow surgery twice now for bone chips from things that he does. And so the thinking there is, this guy's 31. You're giving him a contract. There's little cracks here breaking down, both physically, and the OPS is going down. What if it doesn't age well? And so then 26, Isaac Paredes, who is Alex Bregman, both offensively and defensively, but he's built for that ballpark. And maybe by the end of the year, they might have similar numbers. And one guy's going to be making $40 million minus, present value, and one guy's going to be making $7.
Kind of sticking in the AL West, I'm going to be quite honest. This division doesn't really move me. I think it's a pretty inferior division. Not the worst division because the NL Central exists, but it's definitely in the bottom tier. The Angels are going to be dreadful. The Mariners have a really good pitching staff, but they have no offense, and they did nothing to really address the offense in terms of spending. I think the Athletics are actually going to be maybe a sneaky team. They could flirt with 80-plus wins and be above 500 because I think that offense is going to feast in Sacramento, and I love Rooker, potential top 5 MVP candidate. But to get to the point, I think it's going to come down to the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros. Right now, I'd give the edge to the Texas Rangers if healthy. I just think they have a deeper pitching staff, better bullpen, and better lineup. And so I teased about Jacob deGrom. So as a Mets fan and a former deGrom guy in your rotation who won multiple Cy Youngs, I'm going to throw it out there, Ari. I think Jacob deGrom wins the 2025 Cy Young Award.
I would love to see that. I love Jacob deGrom. He is one of my favorite players of all time. He is my favorite pitcher to watch. I think when healthy, he's what everyone thinks Paul Skeens is when he is healthy. And the way that I is every time he gives up a hit, he throws a ball that it's not a waste pitch. I'm just watching and just expecting perfection. I had a sit-down interview this offseason, and Nathan Eovaldi told me that DeGrom is insane. Like his bullpens, there's nothing on the inner third. Everything is outer third, just dotted. And it's like, and these are bullpens, right? This is off-season bullpens and spring training bullpens, whatever. He's throwing 97, 96, 97 outside black. There's nothing in the inner third. Or in game when he came back last year, he would come out, strike out 2 and give up a fly out, or strike out 2, give up a single, get a ground out, and he'd come back to the dugout pissed off because he didn't strike out the side. Like he expects to strike out every hitter. He expects to go 27 up, 27 down. And me watching, just like as a fan of baseball, I expect him to strike out every hitter. Every time I watch Jacob deGrom pitch and at bat, I just go, all right, this is going to be a strikeout. Because he's that good. It's insane. I saw him in 2021 live. I went to a Braves, Astros Braves game, or sorry, Mets Braves game at Citi Field right before he got hurt. And 15 start 108 ERA stretch he had that was his pitching season of all time before his arm broke down. Unbelievable. There is, if a guy makes contact, you are just like in shock. And so I think he's a great pick for the Cy Young. I think innings and qualifies for the ERA title. He could have a sub-2 ERA. Like, if he's the same guy, right? It's been injuries. It's been 2 years. But he came back last year and pitched a few innings here or there, and he pretty much looks like his first time as a Texas Ranger, his first 5-6 starts from. And what that looks like is 6 innings, 11 strikeouts, 2 hits, 1 run, maybe no run. Like he's unbelievable. And the fact that Chris Sale came back from years of being hurt, of being not good, to going back to being Chris Sale last year, and he's not young. Chris Sale and Jacob deGrom used to play against each other in college. I think that gives hope for the Rangers for Jacob deGrom. If they have him healthy for 162 qualifying innings next year, I actually am worried about them winning the division more than any other team. And if I had to choose today who wins the AL West, I would choose the Rangers. They have a deeper lineup. Their bullpen's fine. Their rotation, if the guys are healthy, can be really good. I don't think that there is a better pitcher in baseball when healthy than Jacob deGrom.
So how are you assessing the rest of the AL West? Kevin mentioned a sneaky team like the A's making some noise. Are you viewing the Astros right now as sort of like kind of A1 type of team that's kind of going to be jockeying for position with the Rangers, or are they kind of maybe just a solid wild card team? What's your assessment of the whole division?
I think the Astros can win the division. I think right now I would pick the Rangers just by virtue of just the talent that they have in the lineup. Their lineup's so deep. But last year they had a lot of the same players that they won the World Series with and were not good. And it just happens. Like they had the World Series hangover, and it happens to teams. And so I think with a year off of that, it's going to help them. The A's, as Kevin mentioned, I think they're fun. I just don't think they're deep. And some young, fun players. Rooker's obviously excellent. They have some pitchers. They have the closer, Mason Miller, who's good. But going down, 1 to 26, their 17 to 26 is nowhere near as good as the 17 to 26 on an Astros or the Rangers, right? Like there are guys that would not make the Astros that would be, especially pitching wise, that would be one of the best players in the A's. They're just not, the talent's just not quite there yet. The Angels are awful. I think the Angels are going to probably be the worst team in the division, and they can absolutely win the division. They have the best starting rotation in baseball. They just can't hit, and they did nothing about it. They re-signed Jorge Polanco, and Donovan Solano, and that was their moves. If I was a fan of the Mariners, and I know that my rotation is built up of I like your DeGrom pick. My AL Cy Young pick might be Bryce Miller of Mariners. You have Luis Castillo, Bryce Miller, Brian Wu, Kirby, Logan Gilbert. Like that's your 5, and then you still have depth behind that. These guys are so good, and they just did nothing. I would be furious.
Yeah, I mean, if DeGrom were to get hurt or they limit his innings, then Logan Gilbert is actually my pivot, who I think would take the Cy Young. I think that guy's nasty. What was I going to say? I think I drew a blank, but yeah, no, I think we're on the same page with the American League West there. Not the most exciting division, but definitely some hidden talent and some fun teams to watch on the horizon. And the Astros, like Jake was talking about, they're basically a new team, especially if you compare them to 2017 or even 2022 when they won the World Series. It's almost a completely different makeover. Justin Verlander, he goes to our division now. He's like 42, pitching for the Giants. I don't expect Justin Verlander to be anywhere near what he once was, but it's a little last hurrah for Verlander. So Shohei Ohtani will take him deep at least twice this season. Calling it now. Not scared of Justin Verlander in the year 2025, but it is what it is. So Ari, one thing I was going to ask you, because you broke a number of signings and offseason moves. Was there any move in particular, minus maybe the Kyle Tucker one, that you were really surprised about? Really had your eyes turning and you were like, oh, that's an interesting move?
The Diamondbacks I thought was interesting. I thought that was a little surprising based on the teams that everyone had been hearing that were in on him. I'm not super surprised, kind of unable, sort of bridesmaid on a lot of guys, because it's just when the Anthony Santander signing for them happened, I was talking to some league sources, and it was one of those things where I knew it was going to get done. Hold up. And so, of course, I'm asking people, like, what's the holdup? And some are sitting here calculating tax and how they between the, whatever, right? And so it's one of those things where just playing some places isn't super convenient. And so that, or there are cities that guys just don't like. And cold weather cities, I think, have some issues sometimes signing guys, unless you're an iconic franchise. You're a Boston Red Sox, you're in, one of the New York teams, you're the Chicago Cubs. Who wants to sign with the Chicago White Sox? Like, who wants to go and freeze and play for a franchise that doesn't, put the infrastructure? Cubs, you can complain about the Ricketts all you want. They are an iconic franchise. They have a great fan base. The White Sox fan base is not the same as the Cubs fan base. As a Mets fan, I know the Mets fan base isn't the same as the Yankees fan base. They're a less iconic franchise than the Yankees are. And so I think the Corbin Burnes thing was fairly surprising to me. I think the fact that the Dodgers continued to go after relievers after they had already a million relievers, Kirby Yates toward the end there, it's like, all right? Like, what's the famous TikTok? Like, all right, that's enough slices. Like, your bullpen's good enough. Like, you're just kind of just adding onto the pile there. So I thought that was surprising when I'd heard, like, hey, Kirby Yates, someone, texted me, Kirby Yates, the Dodgers getting close. I'm like, why? Like, I'd heard early in the offseason and reported this, that the Tigers were interested in him. And that made perfect sense. Like, they need a veteran in their bullpen. And then it ended up being the Dodgers. So I thought, out of Dodgers signings, the Kirby Yates signing was a little surprising. But Corbin, like, the Diamondbacks always do this. They'll come in and just randomly grab a guy. This was Zach Greinke. They did it again with Corbin Burnes. I would say the bigger name ones, that was kind of the most surprising to me.
Yeah, it's funny. I had the same reaction when I heard about Kirby Yates, but then I thought, once we heard the news about, Evan Phillips being hurt and Michael Kopech being hurt, it kind of made a little bit more sense. They obviously knew that, like, these guys were not going to be ready opening day, so they better have a guy that can come in and has that sort of high leverage closer experience. As a former reporter, Ari, I always like hearing about the sort of the inside baseball, behind the scenes kind of, insight from reporters. I am curious, because when you look at the, Major League Baseball landscape as it relates to reporters and insiders, I mean, you've got, the heavy hitters like Jeff Passan or Ken Rosenthal, or even like John Heyman or John Morosi, those guys. You kind of know those names if you're a baseball fan. You're following those guys on Twitter. Some guys have, notifications on for when those guys tweet out, especially Passan. For someone like yourself, where you are plugged in, you are breaking stories. How do you kind of wrap your head around the competition of getting a story out there and kind of beating these guys, and then once you get one that's sort of like does that kind of like fuel your adrenaline? Like, how do you kind of break in and fit in with the rest of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very competitive. I want to win, and when I kind of started, it was one of those things where, and Jake, you worked as going and where consumption is going, and I've been doing TV in local for like 12, 13 years now, 12 years now. And the things that I like doing and the things that I was good at are not necessarily things that the market has shown people care about. And so I want to do the Tom Rinaldi long form feature, make you cry, like get deep into a topic thing. And you look at what has happened with how ESPN is structured now, right? Like E60 is barely a thing. Outside the Lines is gone, and it's crazy how you see the reaction on social, right? Like I did a feature story on a kid who's a golfer from Nepal who golfs at Rice now, and if he turns out to be really, really good and go on a tour, he's going to be the first touring golfer from Nepal in the history of their country. And his family is Nepali royalty. And it's super interesting, right? And you spend a month working on this and you edit the hell out of it and you get nominated for awards for it and whatever. And then you post the story on Twitter and it gets 2 retweets and 17 likes.
Right.
And then you break, I'll break David Hensley minor league deal to the Tigers and it has 100,000 views. And so it's like, this is what the market wants. Like that's just, and so it's, either you shift with the market and you learn the skill to be an insider. And I think it's easier in baseball than it is in basketball and football because the slice of the pie that an Adam Schefter, a Shams, or Woj before he retired had is bigger than the slice of the pie. You mentioned like 5 guys, right? If we were talking about basketball and football, you'd go Schefter, Rappaport, and then you'd go Shams, Woj for basketball. I don't think you're naming Chris Haynes. I don't think you're naming Michael Scotto in basketball. I don't think you're naming Jake Fisher. When it comes to football, I don't think you're naming a number of the secondary tier insiders that I never see these, et cetera, right? Like 2 guys, like 5 guys. And then you have all the local be pretty good at breaking stories on their end. And so that's one thing where, 1, baseball is my favorite sport. 2, I kind of noticed that it is spread more, right? Bob Nightingale or John Heyman or Passan, they're not getting all of them. They're getting a pretty sizable chunk, but it's not, 40. It's not like a presidential election where one gets 48%, one gets 46%, and then the 6% spread among whatever. It's 24, 17, 12, whatever. And so you can maybe get a slice of one of those pies and then build your way up. And so that was sort of the thinking from my end. And then a lot of people ask me, it's like, well, you cover the Astros. Why are you breaking a rant, whatever? I find it easier to be able to get information about the Astros and be able to know more about how they fit into the structure of the rest of the league when I know a little bit about every team. And I don't know, nearly as much about the Dodgers or nearly as much about every other team as I do the Astros and secondarily probably the Mets. Just by knowing a little bit about, these random minor league guys or whatever, I can to some degree predict moves. Like I can have an idea of like a Ryan Presley trade comes up. If I know a little bit of what the Cubs minor league system is about, I know who to text. And that can help. And so if you're a guy that only focuses on your one team, which many people do, and it makes perfect sense why you would, I think that by knowing just a little bit, like, it's a Brewers Reds trade, or like I broke the half of the Gavin Lux trade, right? And so by asking someone about the Reds minor league system, just because you're bored on a Tuesday when some trade happens, then 6 months down the line, let's say the Astros make a trade with the Reds, and you need to sort of figure out what prospects coming back, you have kind of a decent idea of like, all right, it's going to be one of these 4 guys because this is what they're looking for. This is what I heard about this guy. And then you might, you send out your 15 texts to people, and one of those might be the right guy. And then you get a guy saying you back, go, yeah, hey, this guy, this prospect number 19 ranked prospect outfielder is in the trade. And that's how you beat those guys that you mentioned, just by sort of being able to predict it.
It's fascinating stuff. Fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. Really, that's cool stuff. You were, if I'm wrong, correct me. Were you the one that had Eddie Rosario to the Dodgers?
Yes.
So that's an interesting one where he's not a minor league guy at the time. He was an established Major League Baseball player, wins an NLCS MVP, and now is at a stage in his career where he's got to walk onto a team like the Dodgers. And we all know he's not going to make the Dodgers, but clearly he's going there maybe to retool his swing, pick up some tips from some of the top hitters there, and maybe get a second chance elsewhere. So is that kind of like the thinking for a guy like Eddie Rosario?
Yeah, I mean, partially, but as we had talked about in earlier, the Dodgers outfield is to some degree a little bit in flux. You can't put Shohei Ohtani out there. You guys are arguing about who should be in Oscar Hernandez in one spot for sure, and then you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with Michael Conforto in the other spot. And Conforto's had some injury issues, and maybe Eddie Rosario can feel like he can fight for a fourth outfield role or something like that and recapture it. And worst case scenario, you go and work with some of the best hitting coaches in all of baseball, and you're auditioning for 29 other teams. And yeah, the way that works, that was one thing. I was sitting on the couch getting ready for work, and someone goes, hey, I got one for you. Eddie Rosario is going to the Dodgers. You should check on that. And then you check on it, and it ends up being true,
Right. Jake, was there anything else you wanted to ask Ari? Or Ari, is there anything you wanted to talk specifically baseball? Otherwise, I'm going to pivot to a couple miscellaneous things since we're getting close to the top of the hour.
Yeah, I'm glad that we got to talk about Jacob deGrom because he's one of my favorite topics. But other than that, I think I'm good and might need to get out of here because I got to go take my parents to the airport in about 4 hours.
All right, last question. This will be a real quick one. You're based in Houston now. We're a Mets fan. I'm sure you've had In-N-Out Burger. So what is it? Is it In-N-Out Burger or is it Whataburger?
In-N-Out is better than Whataburger, but Shake Shack is significantly better than both of them.
Wow.
Culver's, I'm from the Midwest, so I'm from Iowa. Culver's is significantly better than both In-N-Out and Whataburger.
I respect you for that answer because I feel like a lot of people that either are from Houston or get transplanted to Houston. They want to dance around this issue because they're worried about the hate that they're going to get. And I knew firsthand when I spoke out. I mean, I'm an LA kid, so obviously I was rooting for In-N-Out. I had both Whataburger and In-N-Out. I can appreciate both, but when I spoke out about it, people I just got such shit for it. Whataburger is a very touchy subject in Houston, isn't it?
It is, and I try to stay away from that subject. But since you guys asked, yeah, I have very strong fast food burger opinions. I love smash burgers, so I love Shake Shack. I love Culver's, the Butter Burger. But one Houston place I do like that has smash burgers is Bun B's spot, Trill Burgers, and so that's a place that I would much rather go. But the one, just like it is open late, and there's a lot of cities I like to complain about, San Antonio, that do not have places that are open past 9 p.m. other than freaking Yard House. All right. I don't always want Yard House if it's 10:30 and I'm working and I'm getting off work and I got to have a solid meal. Places that only have Yard House open past 9 p.m. are not good cities. San Antonio. Something else that is open late other than Yard House.
Yeah, I was with you. I worked the morning shift at KPRC, so I was up at the worst hours, and Whataburger was always available. So I did appreciate it for that.
Well, Ari, we really
and the fries are good.
Oh, great fries.
We appreciate you coming on, Ari. Make sure to give him a follow, Ari Alexander. You can see his handle below. It's REA1EXander. You could we'll have it in the description.
There's a guy from the Philippines that took at Ari Alexander, and he wanted $600 to switch. And I'm like, no, I'm not paying you $600 to switch. So
that's hilarious.
REA1 Alexander. The L is Alexander's the number one.
We're gonna let you go to get some sleep. We know it's later out there for you, Jake. I want you to stick around for 1 minute. But Ari, maybe we'll have you on when the Dodgers play the Astros. Or we'll have you on, if that doesn't work, closer to MLB trade deadline, since you seem to be a man well connected. Dude.
Thanks, Ari.
Jake,
yes.
Real quick, since we're near the end of the show here, did you watch the Academy Awards last night?
I did, Kevin.
Do you have any opinions?
Here's my opinion, and I'm going to be very diplomatic about this because I saw your tweet, so I know you loved Anora. I thought Anora was the best movie this year.
Okay.
And I will say this as a caveat, like I didn't see all of the movies. So I didn't see The Brutalist. I didn't see Conclave. So maybe I'm speaking out of school, but when Anora won, and it won a ton of awards, Mikey Madison won, and the writer director, the name is escaping me right now, but he won 4 Academy Awards.
Sean Baker.
Yes, Sean Baker. That to me just validated how I felt watching that movie. So I so appreciated that it won. And on the other hand, I am just even more ecstatic that Amelia Perez didn't win pretty much anything. I thought that aside from the controversial tweets from its lead actress, I thought it just was a bad movie. Like, I thought I can consume any subject matter if the movie's good. The movie was terrible. It was so bad. I guess I'm not being diplomatic anymore, but it was terrible. And I'm glad that a bad movie did not get rewarded.
Yeah, it's not going to be great content right now, but we're on the same page here. I actually did see almost all the movies. So when I'm speaking my opinions, I actually have the watching power to back up what I can say. The best movie was Anora. So the best movie won. Thank God. Great movie. If you have not seen Anora, highly recommend. It is not kid friendly though. So let me add that caveat. It's definitely an adults only movie. So make sure there's no young children around. Mikey Madison in her field actually was the best actress, and no disrespect to Demi Moore, who I know you went to school with her daughters, because my wife has well informed me about her experiences as well. Demi Moore did a great job in The Substance, but she wasn't better than Mikey Madison, in my opinion. No. Amelia Perez was the hottest piece of garbage that came out last year. I just did not understand how a movie where nobody could sing, outside of Zoe Saldana, who was great, everyone else in that movie could not act, and they were garbage, and the plot was stupid. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil the plot, but
yeah, the songs were comical. It was like, I was talking about it with my dad, and we were saying that, like, if you told me that this was a parody or some kind of satire, I'm in. Like, yeah, like, let's do that. But it wasn't. It was supposed to be taken seriously, and it was terrible. And I don't understand all the people that did actually like it or loved it. I don't understand. The one thing I will say about Demi Moore, I thought she was great in The Substance, and I actually really liked that movie. It was really kind of fucked up, but it was a really, like, good movie, I thought. I felt that I felt the only reason that my prediction was that she was going to win Best Actress, because it was sort of like you've put in your dues, right? And you're going to get rewarded. And she did win a Golden Globe. She did win a SAG award. I mean, she was rewarded for her work in that movie, but I was so happy that Mikey Madison won. I thought, what an incredible acting performance. She learned Russian for that role. I heard she listened to, like, Russian, like, speaking, like, before she went to bed, when she got up in the morning. Like, you just love that kind of, like, I hate to compare her to Kobe Bryant, but it's like, you love that kind of work ethic where it's just like, they give so much of a shit about their craft and doing justice to the role. I thought it was well-deserved.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So the other quick thoughts real quick. I'm going to keep this very, very brief. Saw The Brutalist, Adrian Brody, great actor. I would have probably gone with Timothy Chalamet. I thought his performance was slightly better, but I also am a huge Adrian Brody's fan. But his speech kind of came off like a schmuck, in my opinion. Like, pipe down, bro.
It was the longest, honestly, at 5 minutes and 40 seconds, the longest speech in Oscar history. It was just too long. The only thing longer than his speech was The Brutalist.
And then, so speaking of The Brutalist, the last story, the guy that won for best score, Daniel Bloomberg, who at that moment in time, I did not recognize him. But then I did a quick wiki search, because I was like, if he won an Oscar, let's see what his resume is. Turns out he was the frontman for a band that I was a huge fan of back in the early 2010s, a band called Yuck. and they had a tremendous debut LP, and I saw them at Coachella. Great band live, great on record. He abruptly quits the band to go do his own thing. Little did we all know it was a path towards him going to win an Oscar. So good for that guy. Okay, well, that's the Oscars talk for you. Jake, was there anything else you wanted to cover Dodgers related before we quickly get out of here?
No, I love that that Freddie Freeman is back swinging the bat. I mean, he has a couple home runs already this spring. That was that was great. I love that Will Smith is back in the lineup. Kind of found out that he was dealing with some ankle issues that popped up like in June. That's when he injured it, which is crazy to think about, last June. And then continued on the rest of the season. Maybe how could it not have affected his ability in the second half? So I'm glad that he's getting back to normal. And Glass now looks great. And yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying where we're at right now, honestly, with this team.
Yep. Yeah, it's cool to see Freddie Freeman hitting some home runs. My last little thought, Dodgers related, Justin Robleski. Buy some Robleski stock. He's starting to look very good this spring training. He most recently threw 3 scoreless innings, and I think this is a guy that's going to eat some meaningful innings for the Dodgers as a starter at some point this season. It sounds like we've got the Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin battle. They may actually be favoring May from what Dodgers Nation is reporting, if they're accurate on that, but I'm going to give them their credit. They think Dustin May has the edge. We'll see. There's probably going to be 2 more starts for both May and Gonsolin. But yeah, those are those little battles out there right now.
Fantastic.
Well, appreciate everyone for watching. And if you're listening on the audio feed, hope you enjoyed our guest today with Ari Alexander, the up and coming rising MLB insider. If you weren't paying attention, go back and listen, because this guy was backing up what he was breaking. Like, he broke a lot of stories in the last year or two. So he's
also knows his shit too. Like, really just knows his stuff.
Yeah. So legit MLB insider, exclusively here on the Incline. I don't know if any other Dodgers podcast has had him on before, but we love making friends. Hope you guys enjoyed him, and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're on the audio feed, leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back whenever talking Dodgers baseball. Everyone have a great week. Go Dodgers.